I don't think the 5K gets the respect that it deserves. It's often just the fun run that you can do without any training, because most runners can finish a 5K, right? That's not the hard part. The hard part's running it really fast. If you're an adult runner and you've spent most of your time training for the half marathon or the marathon, giving the 5K its due and actually training specifically for it, I think is arguably one of the biggest unlocks for your potential as a runner, because so many of us focus on the longer distances and we increase our mileage. We really focus on the long run. We do a variety of different types of tempo runs and workouts like that, but we never actually focus on speed, power, on our VO2 max capabilities. And that really helps us not just run a faster 5K. Those skills help us then come back to the longer distances and run even better. My name is Jason Fitzgerald, and I'm a Runegade.
Welcome to the RUNEGADE Podcast. I'm Todd, and with me is
Runkle Mark.
Each episode, we dare to explore that lost art of a conversation to better understand this thing that we call running, trail running, walking, what it's about. The greatest guests, the experts, the elites, the underdogs, those doers of big things to help us understand this thing that we love, running. And we're happy to share an episode with you.
That's right. Thanks once again for all those who have written in, and those that are liking the podcast, that are subscribing to the podcast on YouTube or all the other social medias, just interacting with us. Really enjoy chatting with each of you. It makes it fun, right? So continue to do that, and it'll help us continue to do this, right?
This episode, we have Coach Jason Fitzgerald coming back for his second appearance. Coach Fitz, and we are going to do a deep dive on one topic, the 5K. That's it. We are going to geek out on the 5K. Running has exploded. So many new runners that have joined through Run Club and just trying to find their fitness. And usually that 5K is the gateway drug into the running journey. But maybe is that doing disservice or disrespecting the 5K? For new runners, if you're gunning to finish your first 5K race this fall, Jason is going to help you. And for those runners out there who want to challenge themselves, how can you run a super fast 5K? What is it? What isn't it? How to train for it?
I imagine that, like, when it comes to a 5K, somebody, maybe they've been approached by a friend or they see an ad online, and I don't know, is it something that they decide that they're going to spend the summer training for, or is it something where it's just a matter of weeks away? And if it is only a matter of weeks away, like, maybe there's a few things Jason can tell us too that, you know, you don't want to injure yourself. So you want to make sure you respect the 5K.
I'm with you. You got to do everything healthy in the smart way. Jason can help with that. Strength running. He's got the nation's #1 podcast, the Strength Running Podcast. He's coached thousands of runners, helped them to achieve their best in the best way possible, in a healthy way. He always says, like, he has an unpopular opinion, and then he lists his opinion. I have an unpopular opinion that I think you can run faster than you believe possible. And let's explore that with Jason here. Hey, there's no guarantee that the podcast, the video and the audio is going to work really well with our crappy internets.
True. Yeah. I mean, as long as we're getting a visual, even if we were like 8-bit, it's better than nothing, right?
8-bit Mark and beta host Todd.
Wouldn't that be great? How was your Canada Day going?
It's going all right. You know what's going even better right now? I'm refueling with Thrive Ultimate Greens, mango pineapple flavor. We had Joe and Jillian on last episode, and we go right into what runners get wrong with their nutrition. For those who are struggling with their nutrition, check out episode 38, Ultimate Greens, Thrive Protein. It's fantastic. It tastes really good. Cheers.
Awesome. And I'd also want to thank Big Harv for stepping in on that one. So Harvey, thank you. You're looking really good today. I mean, it might be the Path Project shirt, but or that Path Project's hat. But
I never noticed this.
Even in between.
Just wait, I never noticed this. This is the new Seafoam Basis tee with a logo. but it matches my wall. Floris, did you look at my background and make the sea foam? I love it. Whether you're out training for your first 5K or gunning for a personal best or running to your full potential, there's an athletic brew for your gut differential.
I was wondering how you're going to rhyme with potential of all the words to rhyme to. That's like rhyming with orange.
Eminem, I'm not.
Great. No, you know what? Like I went very basic on mine. It was whether you're training for a 5K or you're pulling off a quick 2, there's an athletic brew for you.
Is excellent.
Simple. And as always, the upside down blonde. I am loyal to the blondes. Sorry, Sarah.
Don't let Sarah find
She's
that.
actually a blonde. Sorry. Yeah, no, she's a blonde. She just, I guess that's a big reveal. She's dyes her hair brown, but that's okay.
And I'm going with the aftership.
What? Where'd you get
It's
that?
a special brew. I ordered it. It got delivered. You can use the code TODDM20 for 20% off your athletic brewing order. And this one is a crisp, light body crafted with 5 renowned chefs to support mental health awareness in the culinary industry. Bright notes of lime and yuzu add a citrusy twist. Yuzu, I don't even know what yuzu is, but it tastes really good.
I'm going to have to order some right after this, and I'm going to use that code. What is that code again,
That
Todd?
code is TODDM20 for 20% off your order.
Done. I need Uzo in my life, or Uzu.
Really good. Jason, we are so happy that you're joining us for your second appearance. And, you know, your first appearance was one of our top episodes. And I think we titled it You Faster This Fall. And we covered all those races from a 5K to a marathon. A lot of our listeners are signed up for their first 5K. And they're stressing themselves out. They're going to train all summer to run their best 5K they can. And then there's the other runners out there who I don't believe have run to their 5K potential. And we were thinking about this and we say, why don't we do an episode on the 5K and actually give it its due? The 5K is what people think about for your charity, your local run, but are we actually doing a disservice to the 5K? And it deserves more respect. And I thought maybe that a thing we could explore with Coach Jason Fitzgerald from the Strength Running Podcast and from Strength Running. So Jay, we are so happy that you joined us today.
Oh, thank you. I'm excited to be here. And I agree with you. I don't think the 5K gets the respect that it deserves. It's often just the fun run that you can do without any training, because most runners can finish a 5K, right? That's not the hard part. The hard part's running it really fast. So I'm excited to get into this.
That is a really fast 5K. And think about age groups and genders and whatnot, but like, what is a fast 5K?
Yeah, that's a tough question. I mean, it is somewhat relative, right? It depends on how long you've been running. It depends on kind of where you're competing. You know, if you're a high school athlete, if you're a college athlete, if you're a runner in their 20s, there's different answers for all of these different demographics of different types of runners. You know, like what I can say is for adult runners, I'd love to see you get under 20 minutes. I feel like that is a time barrier that I think a lot of runners think about. It represents pretty much getting under 6:30 mile pace. So it not only is an absolute time, you know, like the 3-hour marathon, like a 4-hour marathon, it's the 20-minute 5K. And, you know, if you can get very specific here and start thinking very competitively, you know, high school runners are going to be running a lot of 5Ks in the 16 and 17 minute range. You're going to get college runners getting down into the 15s, running around 5-minute pace or even faster for the 5K. Really good Division I runners are going to be running even faster than that. You're going to see college athletes running in the 13s and 14s for 5K. At that point, they're pretty much elite level runners. And at that point, just not very relatable to most of us adult runners who, you know, can't think of running 3.1 miles in 14 minutes. But, you know, if you're an adult runner and you've spent most of your time training for the half marathon or the marathon, giving the 5K its due and actually training specifically for it, I think is arguably one of the biggest unlocks for your potential as a runner, because so many of us focus on the longer distances and we run miles, we increase our mileage, we really focus on the long run, we do a variety of different types of tempo runs and workouts like that, but we never actually focus on speed, power, on our VO2 max capabilities. And that really helps us not just run a faster 5K. Those skills help us then come back to the longer distances and run even better. It's running is running. All this training that we're doing is very transferable to any other distance. It's not like you're golfing and then you really hope that your 5K time is going to be fast. It's like we're running. We're training for a 5K. Of course, if we then go run a marathon, we're going to be pretty good at it. We're probably going to improve just because we've been doing all that different training than what we're used to. So yeah, the 5K is a wonderful event that I think is this perfect blend of speed and endurance that has the potential to unlock a lot of potential for runners.
How would you approach then somebody who has, maybe they're running 5Ks for, let's call it recreation, for just staying in shape, but now they've made that decision to go to that next level, to start to compete in their first one, but have a respectable time? Would it be, what kind of advice would you give to them to start building that speed or that endurance, or what? How would you approach that?
Yeah, I mean, we can certainly get very tactical and talk about specific workouts, drills, things that you actually want to do in training before you actually line up on the starting line of that 5,000 meter race. I think first we should probably just mention mindset, because the 5K is often considered this fun run distance. Hey, I run longer than a 5K most days I go running, so this isn't going to be a problem. I think moving out of that mindset and instead embracing this mindset of, this is a race just like any other race that I need to train specifically for if I want to do well. So in other words, if this idea is interesting to you, don't choose a 5K 3 weeks from now. Choose a 5K 3 months from now, giving you that time to properly prepare, to do those specific workouts, to build the necessary foundation before we actually move into those really 5K specific training sessions. So first, let's start with the mindset part of it. We're going to treat this just like a marathon. You're not going to sign up for a marathon 3 or 4 weeks ahead of time. Let's not do it for a 5K either. We need time to build to those kinds of workouts. The problem here isn't volume. It's not the long run distance, which is kind of the main issue with the marathon. It's kind of giving yourself enough time to increase the distance of your long run. That's not the issue with 5K training. The real challenge is getting to a point where you can not comfortably, but adequately run 5K specific workouts without just jumping into them. So number one, let's focus on mindset. And then we can start talking about some of these more tactical things, like no matter if your 5K is 2 weeks from now, 6 months from now, we should probably start building that foundation today. And most half marathoners and marathoners are very accustomed to thinking about your foundation as your base building. This is a foundation of aerobic fitness. It's our foundation of endurance. I want to flip the script a little bit and encourage runners to build a foundation of speed. Now, this isn't a foundation of hard workouts. It's a foundation of your ability to run very fast and be somewhat comfortable doing it. If you get a sedentary 55-year-old to try to sprint on a track, they're going to feel terrible. Mm-hmm. It's not something that they've been doing, and they're really going to have a lot of struggle with the coordination of trying to move their body as quickly as possible. So once we recognize that speed is a skill, it's a coordinated activity that requires a lot of practice, we can start practicing today. And I think the best way to start building that foundation of speed is, let's start running strides yesterday. Strides are simply, about 100-meter accelerations. You might get up to 95, 98% of your maximum speed. So they are very fast, although they're not a complete sprint. I like to describe them as a controlled sprint. And this is just going to help pave the way to those hard workouts. It's sort of like your easy recovery runs allow you to build some level of aerobic fitness so that you can eventually go do a 20-mile long run. Strides are like your speed maintenance drill, this foundation of speed that then allows you to more comfortably run hard workouts, to more comfortably get into those, really quick workouts where you might be running 5K pace, 3K or 2-mile race pace, mile race pace, all these paces that are just incredibly fast. They're all in zone 5. We're not even measuring heart rate at all for these kinds of workouts because it's just all going to be, very close to your maximum. And without a foundation of speed development that you get from strides, perhaps you're doing uphill strides or even hill sprints, which are all slightly different, we can really enable ourselves to gradually get comfortable with this level of speed work so that we can really take advantage of those 5K specific workouts. So, those are some of the things that I would say right off the bat. Like, let's change our mindset around it so that we're giving it its due. And then let's start building that foundation of speed now so that when we do get into the really hard work of 5K training, we're just much more prepared for it.
Renegades, strap in for a gear drop that's going to supercharge your running and style. We are stoked to spotlight Path Project's latest apparel, built for runners who live for the grind and want to look damn good doing it. First up, the James Peak shirt, a trail-ready beast with Toray Air Prime Flex fabric. It's crazy breathable, sweat-slaying, and stretchy, keeping you fresh from the sunrise sprints to those post-run hangouts. Next, the Fortuna Hybrid short. This is your do-it-all wingman, crafted with Delta Weave, recycled nylon and spandex. These water-resistant, quick-drying shorts are perfect for the run, swims, or just chilling with slick pockets for your essentials. And don't you sleep on their famous Graves PX running short, re-engineered with Featherlight Prime Flex fabric and secure pocketing. They're built for crushing all your miles. Founded in 2018, Path Projects delivers runner-first gear with soul. Check them out at pathprojects.com. Make 2025 your fiercest running year yet. And thank you to Path Projects. You can use the code TRP10 for 10% off your order for a limited time. So check them out.
Would you approach it differently depending on the age of the individual? So a 20-year-old, 40-year-old versus 60-year-old?
Yeah, I definitely would. I think it's harder the older you get to train for the shorter events because they do require just more anaerobic VO2 max oriented speed work that is frankly just more risky from an injury perspective for us older runners. I'm going to put myself in that category. I'm a proud masters athlete these days. And, you just got to make sure that you're not overdosing yourself with speed. So for the runner in their 20s, I might be less cautious. I might be okay with 2 hard workouts a week and a long run. For the runner in their 40s, I might amend that to 1 hard workout a week, a long run, and then maybe halfway through the season or a third of the way through the season, we start introducing a second workout during the week. But I would call it a B workout. It's not the priority workout of the week. It's going to be easier than that primary A workout. I'm just going to call it a secondary workout. And you can kind of take 2 approaches to this. I think you can do a more speed oriented, easy workout, something like, let's just say 4 times 200 meters at your mile race pace. That's not a very hard workout. It's only a half mile worth of speed work, but it's getting you very used to running very fast. And I guarantee you 99% of marathoners or half marathoners are never running a workout like that. So this is all part of the process of just getting you comfortable running very fast somewhat frequently. And then, for the runner in their 60s, say, I might not do a secondary workout. I might keep their primary workout in their long run as their 2 quality days. And all the other days, we might just do easy running. We might replace one run with some cross training just to reduce impact. This isn't too different than how you might approach training for different ages for almost any event. A slight reduction in intensity as you get older, spacing out workouts a little bit more as you get into your 40s, 50s, and definitely 60s, embracing cross training as an alternative to some of your running because you just want to mitigate some of the impact forces of running. All those things, I think, might be the same whether you're training for the mile, the 5K, the 10K, or the half marathon. But for the 5K, you do have to be a little bit more cautious because it is just a very short, fast event. And so you don't want to overload the older runner with, too much intensity too early, because the injury risk is exponential compared to just running an easy zone 1 or zone 2 effort.
I like what you're saying there, Jay.
Thanks for that.
Along the lines of like developing that foundation of speed, from your experience and from your knowledge, how quick can actually someone develop speed? And here's where I'm thinking. We underestimate ourselves. Maybe we start running in our 30s or our 40s and we don't think that we're as fast or we can be fast. And maybe that's why folks will shy away from it, not just the injury, but if someone starts with some of the workouts and some of these strides, how quick can speed develop, or you can find your speed?
I think actually, and then this might be encouraging to your listeners, I think it can be built faster than the endurance required to run a good marathon. Like your endurance or your aerobic metabolism can theoretically always be continuously built and developed over time. And that's why a lot of high-level coaches will tell runners, you're going to need 10 years of consistent hard training for you to really start seeing your potential in a long race like a marathon. It just takes a long time for you to build all of the skills, including endurance, which is a skill that takes longer to build. Now, the silver linings there is that it also takes longer to erode. So if you just stop running, your endurance, your aerobic fitness, that's going to be the last thing to sort of dissipate over time as you gradually become detrained. And so the opposite is also true for this kind of neuromuscular fitness, this speed, this coordination to run very quickly. It's built faster, but it's also lost faster. And that's why we always want to be running strides very consistently. I would say there's probably only a couple weeks out of the year that you never want to run strides. And that's the week that you take off after your goal race. Maybe it's the first week you start running when you get back into training after a marathon. Maybe that week you don't do any strides. But strides are like a recovery run. They are so fundamental to training that I think every runner should be doing them very regularly. So we never want to get too far away from that. And so if you're doing them regularly and then you start building some of these, I won't say 5K specific workouts, but workouts that start blending some of these paces where you might have a series of intervals where, the first third might be around your lactate threshold. The middle third is around 5K pace. And then maybe the last 1 or 2 reps is a little bit faster than 5K pace. You're starting to get experience with these faster paces. And so when we say speed, it's this very nebulous concept of like, well, what exactly does that mean? Is that your ability to sprint? Is it your ability to run a competitive 5K time? It's kind of hard to define, but I would say your comfort with running almost as fast as you can is almost like a coordination skill. And you can learn a coordination skill relatively quickly. So I would say 1 to 2 months in, you're going to feel a lot better running strides, running harder workouts after starting strides and some of these workouts than, 1 to 2 months prior.
For the folks who are just going to start their stride journey, what's the best frequency of strides? Is it every run? Is it every other run? And then how many strides? You mentioned it was like for about 100 meters or 30 seconds. Like, what's the best prescription?
Yeah, great question. There's a lot of flexibility here. If you're just starting with strides, I would say, let's do 4 twice a week. And I think that's a pretty reasonable dosing of strides where maybe after an easy run, let's say you have a 4-mile easy run, you finish up the 4 miles, and then in front of your house on the street, maybe on a field somewhere, on the sidewalk, in your backyard, if it's big enough, you can run for about, most runners, it's going to take about 25 seconds. Faster runners might be a little bit under 20 seconds. Slower runners might be a little bit closer to 30 seconds. But about 100 meters where you want to gradually build to about that, 98% of max speed. But the key is that you're only really touching that max speed. You only hold it for a couple seconds until you basically just start decelerating and then you come to a complete stop. So if you were to graph the pace or effort of a stride, it's going to look like a bell curve. And that's really, I think, a helpful way of conceptualizing strides, of accelerating into that almost top speed and then decelerating out of it. You could take a full recovery of just walking or standing around 1 to 2 minutes. Make sure your heart rate comes down. This is not a workout. It's not a hard breathing workout. It's just almost like a drill that you do after an easy run that helps you get comfortable with speed work. Now, very advanced runners, they might do up to 8 strides, and they might do strides 5 days a week, just because they're running strides the day before both of their workouts. They're running strides, on their easy day before their long run, and they're also running strides on their workout days before the workout actually begins. And so you can obviously ease into that frequency of running strides, but let's just start with, maybe the first time you do strides, you only do 2 of them. I don't want you to think you have to do 4, or if you're a college athlete used to doing 6 or 8, you have to bump down to 4. There's a lot of flexibility here, but let's just get in the habit of maybe 2 or 3 times a week, 4 to 6 times, getting up to that really high gear and just spinning the wheels, letting your legs turn over and getting comfortable at that high speed. It's not only going to make the workouts faster, but it's also going to do a great job at improving your running economy, which is going to help you become a better runner too.
Okay, so there's running economy, but what would be on the nutrition side the rocket fuel for somebody's 5K that they just want to be out of the gate? Is there something, like, I'm assuming that, you don't want to have a number of espressos or Red Bulls or anything like that, because you'll probably burn out fast. But is there something that you can recommend for somebody who wants to, be at their peak performance during their 5K? Something that you'd recommend?
I actually think the espresso is a great idea.
Okay. All right.
I think, being on the starting line, caffeinated enough to want to rip your competitors' faces off is a good place to be. Caffeine is one of the world's most studied drugs, and it's, inarguably a phenomenal performance enhancer. So, you can look up how many grams or milligrams of caffeine is appropriate based on your body weight, but we're probably talking a little bit more than 1 cup of coffee, So if you want to have 200 milligrams of caffeine before your 5K race, 90 minutes or an hour beforehand, that is actually one of the greatest ways to ensure that you can fully capitalize on your fitness level. Now, from a nutrition perspective, the great news about the 5K is that you have enough fuel already on board to race a 5K. We don't have to think about fueling as methodically as we do, like we do with the marathon, especially now with the new rules of carb loading. We've really discovered that we can take in and process and use a lot more carbohydrate per hour than we initially thought. I kind of wish I could go back and rerun my 2:39 marathon with more than 48 grams of carbs per hour, because that was not the way to do it. And I probably would have run a little bit quicker than that. But alas, 2011, we didn't know too much about fueling. So for the 5K, I would just say, eat a normal breakfast. You don't want to go into this thing fasted, even though I said you have enough fuel on your body. Eat a normal breakfast, mostly carbohydrate. You don't need a gel during the race. You don't need a gel on the starting line. Maybe you take a caffeinated gel 20 to 30 minutes before the race to top off both your caffeine stores and just to kind of remind your body that, hey, plenty of carbohydrate to go around. You don't have to worry about running out of fuel. Let's absolutely go, let's get this rocket ship started, and you'll be ready for that 5K.
Along the lines of nutrition, you had Brady Holmer on a recent podcast where you were talking about creatine. If we stay on nutrition for a couple seconds here, do you see the performance benefits of creatine in the shorter distance races for runners? Like, runners historically have avoided creatine because they all imagine Mark McGuire when he was hitting his 70 home runs, which wasn't the creatine, it was something else. And we all get these illusions that we're going to put on 25 pounds of muscle, and next thing you know, you're 190 pounds compared to 160 pounds, but that's not going to happen. And it's a great episode, folks. We'll link it in the show notes, where Jay interviewed Brady Holmer and talked about creatine. But what's the hot take on creatine, Jay?
I would say that creatine provides a lot of low-level benefits, but because the benefits are fairly muted, that also means that the risks, the downsides, any drawbacks of taking creatine are also almost non-existent. A lot of folks might have, some general GI distress with creatine, especially if they're experimenting with some of the higher dosing. But if you're taking the recommended 5 grams a day, which, by the way, I take, and, I'm still your skinny cliche runner over here, even though I'm lifting weights and legitimately trying to put on some weight. It's very hard for me to do that. So number one, let's recognize that creatine isn't a cure-all. It's not a panacea. It's not really going to make you feel too much different, although there's a lot of research out there saying it has cognitive benefits, it has recovery benefits. If you are trying to put on muscle, so you're lifting hard at least twice a week, it's probably going to help you do that a bit more effectively. But I would say that whether you're training for a 5K, a mile, or a marathon, it's not going to have any specific benefits for your training. It just might be this nice thing that you take as insurance for the recovery benefits. It might have some cognitive benefits as well, but it's not really going to do anything to legitimately help your 5,000 meter aspirations. Other supplements I think are much more effective, like even something as simple as protein, one of the major macronutrients, because a lot of runners don't get enough protein, or a lot of runners don't time their protein very well. And so if you are doing really hard 5K specific workouts, one of the things that you're going to experience is soreness, because you are experiencing more muscle trauma than you ever are going to experience when you run marathon pace or half marathon race pace. So we've got to heal those muscles. Protein is what helps us heal those muscles. So even if you're getting enough protein, one of the things that you might want to think about is changing the dosing or the frequency of the protein so that it's a little bit closer to your run. So you're getting that 25 plus grams of protein to stimulate muscle protein synthesis within 30 minutes of finishing a hard effort. And that, I think, is probably going to be a lot more impactful, as well as proper fueling, making sure you're not underfueled for sure during any point of your training. I think that's going to probably make a bigger impact than, any supplement like creatine. I'd rather have a runner tell me, I'm getting 300 milligrams of caffeine before my big workouts and races, and I'm flying high, feeling great, I'm crushing my workouts. Like, that's going to drive performance gains, because you're actually helping yourself increase your performance in the workouts, which then you're going to adapt to. And then you go down this spiral of adaptations, which usually a spiral is a bad thing. In this case, it's a good thing.
Hey, Renegades, let's talk about Peluva, game changers in the world of footwear. Founded by primal living legend Mark Sisson and his son Kyle, Peluva crafts minimalist shoes that let your feet move the way nature intended. Their 5-toe design, like the Strand lightweight trainer, gives each toe its own space display, grip, boosting balance and strength, and proprioception with every step. 0 drop soles, and just right cushioning that deliver that barefoot feel without sacrificing comfort or style. Whether you're crushing a trail run, hitting the gym, or just living your daily life, it's not just about function. They've nailed style. making these shoes versatile enough for a date night or a dog walk. Peluva's redefining how we walk one liberated foot at a time. Curious? Head to peluva.com and scan your feet for a perfect fit and use the code RUNEGADE for 15% off your order. Step into freedom. Check out Peluva today. Your feet will thank you.
Well, I think you're spiraling right to the meat and potatoes. We can sometimes overly focus on the things that don't work and often overlook the things that do work. So the workouts, this will make you faster. It'll help you train and progress in a certain manner to help you achieve your goals. So what are the key 5K workouts? And are they different for a new runner versus that runner who's trying to push the envelope to run their full potential?
Yeah, I think the 5K specific workouts that you're going to find really advanced runners doing are just simply too hard for even the intermediate runner to run at their own paces. So, a good example is you might have a college athlete run something like 6 times 1,000 at your goal 5K race pace with, say, a 400 meter jog recovery. And so your college athlete, that 400 jog is probably only going to take about 2 minutes. And you are running 6,000 meters at your goal 5,000 race pace. That's a difficult proposition. You're doing a high volume at a goal pace. So it's not even technically your current 5K PR pace. It's a little bit faster. It's your goal pace. That's a very challenging workout. Now, even those more advanced runners have to build up to that. You might do 3 times 1,000 at 5K pace, and then you throw in some shorter reps that are at mile or 2 mile race pace. So it's like you get some of that work at 5K pace, and then you just practice spinning the wheels. Okay, let's run 200s or 300s or 400s a little bit quicker. Practice finishing faster than I started. Practice running these paces, that are a little bit faster than your actual 5K pace. It's always good to focus on what I like to call support paces. You have your goal 5K pace, and then you might have your 2 mile race pace and your 8K or 10K race pace. And so workouts can include a variety of these paces. You can start at 10K race pace and negative split workouts. So the in-between workouts are always hard to talk about because there's almost an unlimited number of ways of structuring those workouts. You could do fartleks, you could do hill workouts, you could be on the track, you can do different types of tempo runs. It's really easy to talk about the beginner workouts and the really advanced workouts. Another classic 5K specific workout that I really like because it gives the runner a longer repetition is 3 times a mile at your goal 5K pace with very short 90-second to 2-minute recovery jog. And so what we're trying to do with these 5K specific workouts is basically simulate what a 5K is like, except it's a little bit easier. We're running our goal pace. Yes, we're running, just about the 5K distance, in this case, 3 miles, close enough, but we're getting a little bit of recovery in there. And that can be really helpful from a psychological perspective. It's also really helpful, obviously, from letting your heart rate come down, clearing a lot of that lactate because you are going to be anaerobic running those paces. So it's really important that we, get all those exercise byproducts cleared out of the system or as much as possible before we start the next repetition. And these workouts are tough. They're really hard. This is probably another workout that I would not have a beginner do. I think beginners are more likely to achieve good results on either end of the spectrum, right? They're going to do more of the speed development work, short reps, faster paces, but then also some of the longer stuff. They might do a 20-minute tempo run. They might do 3 times 8 minutes at lactate threshold. So they might be on either end of that intensity spectrum. And what's in the middle is basically 5K pace. It's that VO2 max, really difficult work that it's not short enough that you can kind of fake it. Like if you're running a 200 meter repetition, you don't have to be in great shape to kind of fake your way through that workout as long as the recovery is okay. But you also you're going to be challenged with the tempo runs on the longer side, but not in the same way as that VO2 max work that's in the middle. So I think the beginner runners, those with less experience running very hard workouts, should not run the very specific 5K workouts. They should stay on either end of that spectrum. And then once it's developmentally appropriate, then they can run those harder workouts. But hard workouts are like the cherry on top. Hard workouts, it's the icing on the cake. The real input of your training is volume. And I think it's the skill work of strides, of those short reps. Jack Daniels might call this an R workout or a repetition workout. We are basically running short reps at very high speed with good recovery. So it's not challenging you from an aerobic perspective nearly as much as a 5K specific workout, but it's also a lot faster. And so if we can keep that in mind, we can sort of see what level of runner is going to slot into the type of workout that they should be running. So the advanced runner, they can run all the workouts. The beginner should probably stay on either end of the spectrum. And the more experience you have, the closer you can start moving into that center.
That's great advice. I love it. I never heard of it explained like that before, Jay. It's so cool. Like for the beginner runners, stay on the outskirts.
Can I add, Todd? It's almost like, the beginner runner isn't going to be running a lot of volume. And what I like to tell runners is that you have to earn your hard workouts. If you're running 15 miles a week, you're not really in a position to run 3 times a mile at your goal 5K pace, because after all, that is 20% of your overall weekly mileage. You don't have the aerobic foundation to handle that kind of VO2 max work, the volume of VO2 max work. And so the level of workout that you're running also has to correspond slightly to how much you're training, your volume of training. Now, of course, some of this can be cross-training. We're really talking about aerobic development, but a lot of it has to do with the fact that, your workouts are partly dependent on your mileage. So for example, if you want to do 10 miles at goal marathon pace with a 2-mile warm up and maybe a 1-mile cool down, you first have to make sure that 13 miles is manageable, is doable before you do a huge chunk of it at marathon pace. So you can kind of see how the volume is that foundation. Just like strides are the foundation of speed. If you don't have the aerobic foundation, you can't do those really hard specific workouts. So you just got to be careful there.
In your workout. Yeah, I like that.
And how important is that recovery or that cool down? Like, is that something that's underrated for the newer runner, that if you're starting to, work your way up to this, don't discount the need to cool down properly. Don't just give up at the end and, walk in your house if you're doing training around your neighborhood or anything like that. Like, can you expand on that a little bit more?
Yeah, I think the cool down from the workout is probably more important the harder the workout is. So the only workout where I will not prescribe a cool down is, say, a long run that ends with a segment at marathon pace. You can just be done with the run at that point. You don't necessarily have to run at your easy pace to help cool down from marathon pace. And once we understand sort of physiologically what's happening, we'll understand why. So when you're running marathon pace, you're in zone 3. There's very gradual rising levels of lactate in your blood. And once you stop running, those levels just sort of go down to baseline and you're good to go. The problem with any faster running, especially anaerobic running, where you're running faster than your lactate threshold, is that there's a lot more of that lactate that's produced. There's also all these other exercise byproducts. You're going to experience more adrenaline. You're going to experience more cortisol. There's going to be more biomarkers of damaged muscle tissue. I think creatine kinase might be one of those biomarkers, but one of your listeners is definitely going to have to fact check me on that exact biomarker. You'll see it in a blood test if you're overtrained. It's basically a symptom of you not recovering properly. And so when you do these much more difficult 5K specific workouts and you experience a lot more lactate, a lot more of all of these exercise byproducts, you need some time to properly get your engine back to neutral, if you will. Let's get your body back to that position of rest. And if you think about the warm up as bridging the gap between sedentary and really hard running, we also need that bridge between really hard running and being sedentary on the other side of the workout. So you got to get up to the workout, and then you've got to get down from the workout too. And that's where the cool down can come in. Now, 10 minutes of easy running can probably do it for a lot of different workouts. If you're a higher mileage runner, this is also where you get some of that mileage. So you might do a 3, 4, 5 mile cool down after a workout. And that just pads your overall weekly mileage, and it helps you just get in more volume over the course of the week. But overall, the cool down, I think the cool down's properly rated. I don't think it's underrated or overrated. It's just what I think is almost a necessary part of the equation.
What about during the workout, Jason? So if you're doing these intervals, and let's say you're going to run a mile, and then you're going to have a 2-minute cool down or a step down, can you have it? Can it be too long? Can it be too short? Like, help us understand that as new folks trying to find their speed.
Yeah, great question. The recovery interval in between repetitions is important. I would say bread and butter, 2 to 3 minutes is probably the the time duration that is most appropriate for most workouts. One of the workouts where it can be beneficial to do a shorter recovery interval of maybe a minute or 90 seconds is for 2 different workouts. Number one, very specific workouts where you don't want a lot of recovery, where you want to be simulating the race itself. So, that 6 by 1,000 at 5K pace that we talked about earlier, maybe that workout, you're only doing a minute or 90 seconds of easy recovery running in between each rep, because you don't want full recovery. You want the workout to be really hard. Now, the other opportunity where a short recovery interval might be a good idea is if you're doing a workout that isn't actually very hard, that's still aerobic in nature. So I'm thinking a threshold workout, maybe you're running repetitions at half marathon or marathon race pace, where you don't need a tremendous recovery because you're still aerobic for those paces. This can be another good opportunity for a short interval. And then on the other side of things, if we're talking a 4 or 5 minute recovery interval, now we're getting into some weird workouts. Most workouts don't have this long of a recovery interval, and that's just because most workouts are manageable. When you start doing some really hard workouts that are not even specific to the 5K, maybe you're just running 4 times 800 plus 4 times 200, and you might be running these kind of at that 2 mile race pace, and then you get to the 200s, and those are almost as fast as you can go. This is a pure VO2 max, hard type of effort. You might want a 3 or 4 minute recovery interval in between the 800s, and then maybe only a 2 minute recovery interval between the 200s. So that's a good example of, if you're running very, very hard, you're going to want a longer recovery interval. I did a workout when I was in high school that was 4 times 400 meters. That might not seem very hard, but every 400 was at your best effort. So you basically had to race 4 400 meter races, but you got a 5 minute, mostly walking recovery interval in between each 400. So this is an entirely different type of workout than most runners will probably ever do. I don't think this is a great workout for most runners. It's for the young runner who can recover from stuff like this and who has that foundation of speed behind them. But it's just a good example of the fact that if you are running a workout that is brutally hard, you're going to the well. It's one of those, see God workouts. Maybe the longer recovery duration is warranted in that kind of a situation.
And how important is it to be in tune with, I would imagine, with your body, and if you feel any kind of tingles or any kind of, sensations and things like that? If you're somebody who is, say again, new to 5Ks and you're starting to push that body a little bit more, Like, how do you know what to run through versus what not to? Is there any kind of advice you can give on that?
Yeah, I sort of have like a 3-step process for knowing what to run through and when you should think twice about it. So if anything that you're experiencing is, the pain or discomfort is sharp or stabbing or severe, that's a red flag. We shouldn't run through any kind of discomfort that is literally making you say ouch or ow, that hurts with every step. Any kind of, acute pain like that, that's a red flag that you're doing additional damage. So stop. We don't want to make any problem worse than it already is. The other issue is if you're running and if you kind of change your form a little bit, you can manage the discomfort. This is only going to cause other problems. You're basically giving yourself a self-imposed limp where you're kind of hobbling around the injury or niggle or however you want to describe this discomfort, and giving yourself that kind of a limp or a workaround to be able to keep running. Like, oh, well, if I stay on the outside of my foot and I don't pronate too much, then my arch doesn't hurt. Well, that's only going to cause other issues. So that's another red flag. Don't run through anything that causes you to change your form. And then finally, the last thing that I'll say is anything that progressively gets worse as you run is another good indication that you're doing additional damage to your body. So don't run through a discomfort that just progressively gets worse and hurts more and more throughout the run. Now, on the converse side, if any of that, the opposite of all that is true. So a pain that gets better as you run, that's a green light. A pain that might be more of an achy, dull soreness as opposed to that sharp stabbing pain, that also might be an indication that what you're experiencing might be just a little bit more soreness, an achy muscle, something that you can warm up through and get through. And then, of course, something that obviously doesn't cause you to change your form. So if you can kind of get through that 3-step process, that's a good indication that you can probably run through whatever you might be experiencing.
Those are excellent 3 steps. And I like what you say there, because I think a lot of runners stress out when they feel something that is a little off and they're like, oh no, it's going to derail my entire training. And then there's a good actionable way to say that if you look at these 3 steps, we talked about the new runner, the experienced runner. We talked a little bit about nutrition. We talked about the workouts. You're going to toe the line. You're ready to go. And all the different ways that you could actually pace the 5K. I think myself, I've mastered the art of the V-shaped pacing, where I go out really fast and I die. I like to think it's the Steve Prefontaine pace, but I'm not Steve Prefontaine. Help us understand pacing strategies for these races.
Yeah, the 5K is certainly a race where if you go out too fast, you are just going to be taking a lactate bath, and you are quite possibly not going to be able to come back from that if you go out really, really hard. Now, I do like to see runners go out kind of hard in a 5K because it's a relatively short event and you recover fairly quickly from a 5K. And so this is very different than a half marathon, because if you race a half marathon and it doesn't go well, maybe 2 weeks later you can sign up for another half. With the marathon, you almost have to wait an entire another training cycle. But with a 5K, you could sign up for another one next Saturday morning and exact your revenge on the distance. So you can give yourself more at-bats at the 5K distance. And so there's more room to experiment. There's more room to be aggressive, to go out fast, to try new pacing strategies. So the one thing I'll say is let's not be too conservative with a 5K, because I think if you've never raced a 5K, it's very tempting to treat it like a half marathon or one of those longer races where you use the first mile as a warm up, you're just getting into it the first couple minutes and you gradually start picking up the pace. I don't want anyone to treat a 5K like that, because you sort of have to be on at 5K pace right from the gun, or else there's just not enough runway over the course of 3.1 miles to make up for that slower starting pace. So, an even pacing approach, I think is perfectly fine in a 5K. If you wanted to run the first mile 5 to 10 seconds faster than what the average is that you'd like to maintain, if you're a dialed athlete, that's enough to be stressful. If you're a new runner with the 5K and you're not even sure what you can do, just sign up for like 3 or 4 5Ks and just iterate each time, because it's going to take a whole couple attempts at the distance for you to really understand what your capabilities are like over 3.1 miles. A lot of runners understand what they can do over 6.2 miles or 10 miles or 13.1 miles. But it's difficult when you start getting to these shorter distances. I guarantee you get a normal runner off the street and you say, well, what can you race 800 meters at? They're going to have no idea, because it's just not an event that they have much experience with. So number one, let's race 5Ks somewhat frequently so that we get that baseline understanding of what we're capable of. And then we can start fine tuning the pacing. But in general, even pacing is pretty good. I like to be slightly aggressive and maybe go out for the first mile 10-ish seconds faster than what you hope to average. Now, for the runners who might be experiencing this big upward trajectory of improvement, let's say they've set a whole bunch of PRs this year. Maybe they're not entirely sure what they could do in a 5K and they're ready to experiment. I like to, one of my favorite 5K race strategies, I affectionately call letting Jesus take the wheel. And that's when you just go out really hard and you basically go through the mile mark, not 10 seconds faster than what you think you could average, but, maybe 20 or 25 seconds faster. And you try to hang on for dear life. 80% of the time, this approach is going to fail, and you are going to discover your limits, which I might argue is a valuable learning opportunity for you, even though it's painful, maybe a little embarrassing to tell your friends about your V-shaped, 5K pacing. But it is teaching you something about what you are currently capable of, and there's a lot of value in that. But 10 or 20% of the time, it's going to work, and you're going to have a breakthrough. And that's when it makes it all worth it, where you end up having maybe a 40-second PR in the 5K. I think that's possible for a lot of adult runners, because with such little experience in the 5K, there is room for that kind of improvement. So it basically goes from even pacing to much more aggressive pacing over the first mile. But that's generally how I think runners should approach pacing the 5K, which we should also, I know we talked about the cool down, but because you have to start a 5K at 5K race pace or faster, which is really hard, it makes the warm up much more important than, say, for a half marathon or a marathon. So we need to be sweating with heavy breathing, with a couple miles under our legs, having run a couple strides, because we need to be metabolically primed to run 5K pace right from the beginning of the race. So we should be breathing hard and feeling like we're ready to go right at the beginning.
I love that. So it's 80% of the time you fail every time, with what you're mentioning before. So Jason, just in the final few minutes here that we have with you, the fastest way for me to shave off a minute from each kilometer that I'm running here, is it going to be carbon shoes? Is it going to be creatine, or is it going to be a whole lot of espresso? What's it going to be?
I would definitely opt for a lot of caffeine and the super shoes for sure.
Perfect.
Both are legitimately proven to make you a faster runner, and you're probably leaving a lot of speed on the table if you're not fully caffeinated, body trembling a little bit at the starting line with your carbon shoes on.
Wonderful. That's how I start work every day. So perfect. It's wonderful. Well, Jason, again, as always, we really appreciate the time that you spend with us here and giving all these nuggets of information. It's absolutely helpful for all of our new runners out there and even our seasoned runners. So thank you again for your time and for dialing in from wherever in the world you are right now. We truly appreciate you just taking time out of your busy day for us. So,
well, Mark, Todd, thank you guys so much. I know this is my second appearance. It's always fun to chat with you guys. And I'm so glad we're giving the 5K a little bit more of a focus today, because I think so many runners do focus on the half marathon and the marathon. And those are great distances. Don't want to take anything away from them, but I do want to give the 5K all the recognition that it deserves. And for a very long time in my life, it was one of my favorite distances to compete in. You know, I'm old school. To me, it's not the 5K, it's the 5,000, and it's a track event, not a road race. But I'm a little bit of a track purist. You know, if you can sign up for 12 and a half laps around an outdoor track, it's probably going to be faster than a road race. You know, the track is probably the fastest venue for racing. So if anyone can get into a track meet like that, you're probably going to run your best 5K on that surface. But thanks again.
To know. Thank you so much.
We thank you for listening to the Renegade Podcast. Each episode, we set off to explore what it means to be a runner, a human, all in that curious quest of being just a little bit better tomorrow. If you enjoy our Renegade content, we'd really appreciate your support and engagement by subscribing to our YouTube channel and following us wherever you listen to your podcasts. And we'd also love to hear from you. If you have a show topic, a guest, or a general comment, drop us an email, runegadepodcast@gmail.com. That's RUNEGADE podcast@gmail.com. And remember, in a world of runners, be a renegade.